Hello, elevator community. Welcome to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. My mission is to empower my fellow elevator entrepreneurs in creating your growth plan, which is going to free your time, allowing you to rest easy. I'm your host, Sean Madden. I've had an amazing 35 years in the elevator industry, starting out in the field, managed several elevator companies, started, built, and sold Madden Elevator Company for well over market value, and serving as your NAC president. I've done a lot in the industry, and now I'm ready to pay my knowledge forward. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. I have Mr. Christopher Short here, formerly president and CEO of Southern Elevator Company. Christopher, welcome aboard.
Well, hi, Sean. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
We're going to have some fun. It's been great working with you lately. I'm very excited to hear your background and story. I know I've heard bits and pieces of it, but why don't you go through how you got in the industry and what brought you to where you are today?
Well, first of all, I won't go back too far in time, but I will tell you that the elevator industry and I have been in a professional relationship now for the past 20 years. And it happened quite by happenstance and opportunity. At the time when a position presented itself to me when we lived in Connecticut, which is where we're originally from, I was working at a country radio station selling advertising. And while that was fun, I needed to really get a little bit more serious about my professional direction and really wanted to establish a career where I could work on helping people accomplish, just solve problems. Really, it's basic as that. The opportunity came to meet with and discuss with an owner of a very small independent company in Bridgeport, Connecticut called Brown Elevator. Jerry Brown was the owner. He had a need for a service manager. And I, at the time, very green to the industry, obviously knew the basic functionalities of how to ride an elevator. It was about it. But I knew that I could sell and I could be relational with people. And that job, he gave me a chance. And to come into the industry, to learn the basic mechanics and how to speak the language of the industry and what customers needed from a service provider, that part of it was learned in the field with the mechanics. And I gained a high level of respect for their level of knowledge. It was something that was very unknown to me prior. I'd never even thought about preventative maintenance or repair of elevators. I just used them as the rest of the general public does. So joined Brown Elevator in 2005, grew the company nicely. What we were really focused on there was repair and how we could grow that segment of the business. They had a nice little maintenance business, about 6 or 7 mechanics at the time, family-run organization. That led me to an opportunity that my wife and I had been discussing for many years, which was moving down into the South. We're both originally from Connecticut. We had young children at the time, and we so much wanted a different lifestyle for our family, and happened to know someone who worked at Southern Elevator. We've been personal friends for almost 30 years now. He called me up and he said, you've got to come see this company down here. It is amazing with the people that are here, the way that they conduct business and the opportunity. So that combined with the desire to move down towards the South, we had an opportunity to come and interview with Southern. I joined them in June of 8 in business development. I did new contract sales, repair sales, and modernization sales. And from there, things evolved. What I noticed when I came down here, specific to the industry, with the level of passion that people had towards solving problems on behalf of their customers. But more so, it was a combination of that passion to help other people with the opportunity that some of the other providers were allowing independents to take advantage of, stepped up to the plate properly, because there was a need for transparency in service, but actual commitments to providing the service that companies agree to provide. And from that perspective, we grew a very nice business organically of maintenance customers, repair customers, and modernization customers. We knew what our niche was, and we went after it from that perspective. So we weren't trying to overgrow the company or trying to step out of what we provided and what we did well. That's where you can excel a lot of times, is where you figure out what that niche is and then you repeatedly do it with excellence. The company grew quite nicely through the years. I was given the opportunity by previous ownership to move to the first director of sales of the company in 2011. Hired a sales team, first one in the company's history. This is a 65-year-old company at the time. but they had always grown organically through word of mouth and good reputation. From there, I moved to director of operations in 2014 and then president in 2015, culminating in CEO in 2024. The company itself grew extremely well. The volume, along with nice margin gains, because we did business properly. We told the truth, we were transparent, and we gave the customer what they were requiring from us, which was good service and being humble, serving leaders towards them.
Wow, that's an amazing story, amazing progress in the industry, and pretty intriguing, pretty exciting. One of the things I got out of your story that was a little intriguing was, and you may not even know this, I was actually born in New York City.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, most people don't. My mom was from New York, and my dad was in the military. He was in the Air Force, and he got out of the Air Force in New York, and he had a friend that was in the elevator industry, worked for Otis Elevator. That's
Wow.
how he got in the industry, just because you used to have to know somebody, obviously. But they
Or be related.
yeah, or be related, yep. But my sister and I both were born in New York. We moved to Kentucky when I was 3, and I don't remember New York much at all, but it was interesting that you said you were looking to move further south and raise your family, and my family obviously went through a similar thought process and decision. They picked Kentucky, you picked North Carolina, and I think the same scenario, like, they picked Kentucky. My dad was from Kentucky, but also that's where Otis had an opening, so they were able to transfer him down, so pretty intriguing. I appreciate that.
That must be why we actually get along well.
Right, right, yeah. I appreciate those insights. A great story, great history. The next thing I wanna chat through, one of the things we're always talking about on here is, what are the business challenges you faced? What is a big business challenge you faced? And give our listeners some ideas and insights and maybe some of the stuff you did to help solve it. We just want to talk through those pieces.
Sure. So starting off in sales in Southern in 2008, I think a challenge that's faced by a lot of independents throughout the nation and potentially the world is the recognition of the brand. A lot of customers or building owners, property managers, et cetera, are under the impression or belief that if the elevator equipment is manufactured by brand X, then brand X is the only company that takes care of that type of equipment. There aren't alternatives. Well, we
Right.
all know that if we go and buy a Honda, that we can go to Honda to have it serviced, and we may have a great service experience there. But we also have choice in the marketplace. So people accept that in the automotive side and the air conditioning service side. But I think there's a stigmatism towards independence based on lack of knowledge and education on the customer side. So I see that as one of the main challenges in our industry, working from the independent side. How we educate the customer base, property managers, facility managers, and folks responsible for vertical transportation equipment is that there are not only good alternatives out there for preventative maintenance, repair, mod, and new installation, but potentially superior alternatives that they could partner with and really grow in relationship with that for long term. So to me, it was how do we get the name out there? How do we get the brand known to people and have that trust established? And the second largest challenge from that perspective was contracts being as prohibitive as they are for customers to change. Most customers that I came across, and I believe many people do today, are in a multi-year contract with a automatic renew clause. And the information on those contracts typically isn't always either readily available on the customer side, or it may be misinterpreted, or they may have missed the renewal date, what have you. So they end up renewing for a certain term, which locks them in again. And with the amount of folks that travel from job to job, position to position today, the person that I may have been talking to in 2009 who enjoyed what I had to offer, what I had to say, may not be the same person in 2013 I could talk to again when it came time to make a decision, plus where the contract goes. So there's a lot of databasing in order to really become good at lead generation. That combined with the fact the customers needed to understand they had choices in the marketplace, I think were two of the biggest challenges that we face. The other thing that was a big stand, I've seen this a lot of independents, is the way the businesses are formed. A lot of times is through mechanics start their own companies and they form those companies and grow their base based on the reputation of their skill set. And what I found was that without specific business structure in place for how things get done, and as you grow and as you scale and you hit ceilings of threshold, skill sets of employees need to be enhanced, process needs to be documented, all sounds like fun stuff, but it's vitally important in order to grow the company in a healthy manner. And we overcame that challenge by doing just that. First of all, putting structure in place. How does the
Mhm.
company operate internally? How does communication occur? How do issues get resolved? How do plans get created and followed? Where's the vision come from, and how do employees buy into that vision so that we have everybody rowing in the same direction? It's an incredibly hard feat to achieve. But once you've gotten the structure laid into a company and then practiced by also people understand it. In our case, we chose the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, and we self-implemented that. From there, you can start to establish business processes, or what I call, how does a bill become a law? How do we
Yeah.
service a customer? How do we invoice? How do we market? How do we do all of these things that need to be formalized in order for a company to reach newer heights? There needs to be a very vibrant, dedicated culture. Now, the way that a service company, whether it's elevators or other, excels is when the employees exhibit servant leadership. It's serve others before yourself. That's a very basic principle. When you're in the service business, how you treat the internal customer, meaning fellow employees, and how you treat the
Mhm.
external customer is vital to the company's growth and stability. Without that, we talked about the cliches that everybody rowing in the same direction. That can't be achieved without a culture of people who have buy-in, who understand what the goal is, the vision, they trust leadership, and through transparency of financials, through everybody understanding the goals and the visions of where the company was heading. And we tied it all into a bonus program too, called the All for One program. That meant if we
Mhm.
rise and we do well, we all celebrate that. At the same time, when we have challenges, we all have to work harder to get back to that apex of success.
I want to go back just for a minute on the operating system. EOS was one of the tools that really helped me figure out how to go from an elevator mechanic, an operational guy, to actually running a business, being a visionary. I really wasn't 100% sure how. I did a lot of reading, did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, had a lot of coaches, but I never could put all the pieces together. And I actually stumbled across the entrepreneurial operating system. It wasn't actually in Kentucky. It was in Indianapolis and hadn't made it to Kentucky yet. And when I stumbled across it, it kind of put all the books that I was reading together into one systemized approach to how you can run your business. That really helped me because you were talking about people that come from the field. I came from the field and went into supervision and management and learned that in other companies in sales. Then when I started my own business, I went back out in the field, sell, go do the work, come back in and sell, go do the work. And then you grow to a point where you're ready to start adding people. When I grew to a point where I was ready to start growing the business, I really didn't have the tool that could help me. So the EOS tool helped me tremendously. It's one of my favorite tools. And a lot of what I tell people now, because of the business that I have, Elevator Strategic Hub, really helps businesses go more from either startup or running to 5 to $10 million. But EOS has been a really good tool for $5+ million companies that has structure and has multiple people that you can help you organize how you manage them. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you implemented EOS and what it did for Southern Elevator?
Much like you, I found out about it through a Vistage meeting. So I call that happenstance as well. There was a presenter who was an EOS implementer, and he presented to the group. And at the time, I think I had just become president for a year and a half prior. And again, like you, being an expert in the field, I was really good at sales, right? Then, and I was able to be promoted through the company because of other skill sets. But when it came to leadership of a company, that's a whole other thing. And I
Mhm.
needed to learn it. And I'm very much so a person who thinks along the KISS principle of keep it simple, sir. Put that politely. Just keeping it simple on how we can create. And look, the elevator industry and our service industry in general can be a reactive environment. We used to talk about being firefighters. Where's the next fire? Let's go put it out. There's no way to sustain a business that way. You burn your employees out. You cannot grow strategically, and your efforts are going into the problem of the second versus the long-term vision. So when we looked at EOS and met with an implementer and started to understand the structure, it was simplistic. It talked about simple things that, well, maybe they're simple things to me now, but a regular meeting, a meeting that starts on time, ends on time, and has certain thresholds of structure in that meeting. Why is that important? How many meetings have we all been to that are great to be together and great to enjoy a cup of coffee together with everybody. At the end of the meeting, nothing happened. EOS teaches structure on how to have a meeting, start at point A, get to point B, have result C, and then follow up on D the following week. There's one thing in there that really creates traction, which is movement through business. If you have goals, which EOS teaches you, they're called rocks in the EOS system. And for instance, if I commit to my management team that I'm going to take on 5 rocks, which are goals in a 90-day window, every week I have to report to that management team, am I tracking just to complete that rock in the end of 90 days or am I not? And if I am, that will typically move to the next person for their report. But if I'm not, the team has the ability to challenge me back to say, hey, you committed to this in 90 days. You're not tracking towards completion. What can we do to help support? So that also helps with the bonding of the team as well towards the goal. But it also breaks things down like how to use data and KPIs. This is a super important one. Right people, right seat.
Yeah.
When this was first introduced to me through EOS, the thought was as a business grows, the skill set of the employee needs to evolve as well. Traditionally, a lot of companies that are started and family run and have what I described prior, which was not as much business structure in place, jobs done on the approval of a handshake versus the signed quote, for instance. How do you get the right people in the right seats? Well, EOS teaches you through the divisions of how to create an accountability chart, how to do a people analyzer that relates to your core values, how to put the right people in the right position in order to execute the functions that need to be done by people who actually have the skill set to do that, not people that are just nice. And that's why we have them employed, because those people can be positioned into something else where their skill set is, where their natural talents are. EOS helps to vet that out. But the goal of all of it is to create communication structures in the company. For instance, level of the company at Southern, we evolved into having its own L10 meeting. L10 stands for level 10 in the EOS world. And the reason it's called level 10 is because you're able to score the meeting individually and you're trying to get as high a score as you can. Did the meeting start and end on time? Did we go through the outline as we're supposed to? Did we discuss issues? The purpose of doing that throughout all business units in the company is so that if I'm on the finance team and my finance leader, CFO, a controller, whatever, is leading an L10 meeting and there's an issue within the finance department that may have to do with operations. Well, how does the finance leader communicate appropriately to the operations leader of what that issue is so it can be resolved, and who tracks it to make sure it's actually resolved? EOS teaches you how to do that. But more so, if that finance issue and that operations issue cannot be decided on that level, then EOS allows that through structure to bring that issue up to the executive level. The executive level can, what's called IDS, identify, discuss, and solve, resolve the issue, and then move forward with it. So it allows for that up and down communication, but accountability and resolution. It's a big part of why EOS is so successful and so impactful to use within a company.
Yeah, it's been one of my favorite tools. The only thing that I struggled a little bit with was it's simple, but it's not simplistic. And it is challenging. Right. It's amazing to me that implementing those tools seems so simple when you go through that process and you read them. Like, yeah, this is a no-brainer, but being disciplined is probably the most important piece of the puzzle. Using the tools in a disciplined way and
you're
using
right,
them
but greatness is
effectively.
not achieved in an easy manner. So there is no way to obtain perfection in life. But when you focus on excellence and you aim towards excellence, you then catch a level of perfection. And that's the best that we can do as people, right?
Yeah.
So you're right. It's simple, but it's not easy. But through leadership and through consistent messaging with the team, there becomes buy-in as to why this meeting starts at this time and ends on this time, and why that is so important not to violate it. Because if you violate it, then things start to go astray. The traction starts to slow down and be broken. And so it does evolve over time. It's absolutely not a magic 5-minute cure.
No, and for me, my background is engineering. So I wanted everything to be perfect all the time. When I was in the field, I was in adjusting. When I went into operations, I was stressed all the time because every time I saw a problem, I went in and solved the problem. And I figured out what I could do to mitigate it in the future. But there's literally no way to mitigate everything all the time. And one of the things EOS gave me was amazing. It said 100% is perfectionist thinking and not attainable. 80% is the minimum goal, and you want to be somewhere around 90. And as a leader, once I wrapped my head around that concept and started building the tools, in place with the KPI scorecards and following and tracking and using those tools, it helped me realize that, okay, everyone's not going to be like me and everyone's not going to be perfect and I'm not going to be perfect and I'm going to make mistakes, but that's okay. That's part of the learning process. And that was just one of the best parts of EOS. Shifting gears slightly, because you were talking about culture, and I think culture is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And the solve for culture is really oftentimes right person, right seat. And you touched on that. How did you work through those pieces and finding the right people for the right seat to build the team around you so that the culture was growing with the company?
In the beginning, it was very hard. It had a family type atmosphere to it. That operating like a family environment is good for a family. This is a business, so you could still have that culture or want to aim towards that level of attachment, but still have a business structure surrounding it. So what I started with was the old adage of working smarter and not harder. I was working harder and harder every day. And I knew that I was heading towards burnout because I was coming to work every day with the title of a leader, but with the mindset of an employee and a manager. So I knew I was stuck there. And again, I'm not an avid reader, but when I do read, I pick what I read very carefully. 2 books that I indulged in. One was The E-Myth, which helped me understand that just because we had picked this employee to do this position because their past experience and expertise was here, doesn't necessarily mean that they are still good in that position. They may have just excelled for the reason we hired them. For instance, if we said this person has been an accountant all of their life, they've done great, they're the best accountant you could possibly find, should they be the CFO? And the answer is maybe, but maybe not. And you have to make that business decision and that delineation in order to pick people right. That's where that people analyzer comes in, the people that surround you and where their strengths are. Everybody's got skills and they're all individual. Everybody's got something, but the seat has to be right for that. The second one that I read was The Great Game of Business. What I took from there is you rise together, you fall together. Rising tide raises all ships, and the other way too. But to me, that created buy-in. The second thing about The Great Game of Business was financial transparency. It is so important to me as a leader to be able to go to an employee on almost every level of the company and be able to say, this is what our financial picture looks like. And have that employee say, yeah, I know because I've seen that too. And reducing the fear from leadership or ownership that we can't talk about financials amongst employees, then they might know what's going on. Well, yeah, we want them to know what's going on because we want their buy-in to help drive with us, right? So there is some tearing down of walls and assumptions that you have to do when you start to incorporate new ideas, but none of these ideas are out there. They're pretty simple. A service provider cannot provide the level of service that the company attains to want to provide if the employee isn't part of that process and they're not cared for and they're not seen as a valid part of the team. We typically work in environments where we've got multi-generational people working, and multi-generational people expect different things from a reward perspective. They like to be addressed differently. I was being asked, I don't want a raise next year. Please don't give me a cost of living raise. Just give me more PTO. And then, for my generation, I'm like, but you do need to learn those things as well. But the overall goal is to be inclusive with the employee, to show them that they're part of the organization, why their part matters. And then through EOS, keeping them accountable to the results that they're producing. And it creates an amazing culture. It means a leadership group that truly wants to invest in the individual and believes that that you have the right servant leadership within your culture, they're going to serve not just their internal customers, but their field and fellow staff members and management, but they're also going to go to their customers with a level of care that you just can't train that.
Yeah. Now, you obviously built an amazing culture at Southern in your tenure there. And it's amazing to me. I think there was 120 people there the last I heard. And everyone seems to be rowing in the same direction. That had a lot to do with your leadership and pulling the culture and the team together. But obviously, it's amazing to see that progress and the growth progress. 75 years now, right? That's a great feat
75
for
years.
any business.
That's what that means, is that these systems work if you give them the opportunity to work.
Right. And we could sit here and talk all day about EOS and business structures. I love that kind of stuff. What's one good golden nugget or one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with? What's something that you would like them to take home and maybe implement?
I take this to heart in my personal life and my professional life, that the people I interact with on a daily basis, whether I've got somebody in my home working on my air conditioner or I'm at the grocery store, the respect of the individual to me is something that we are all responsible for ensuring that we show and we demonstrate and that we move forward with as a daily walk, really. I just feel that with the pressures of margin and top line growth and all of these buzzwords that the art and the business world have to address, that of course, we're a for profit organization, the people component is so vital to that success. I believe that there's enough companies out there and ways of running companies that is the more heavy-handed approach. I've always believed, and I've been in those environments, and they don't work, believe it or not. My goodness, you treat people the way you want to be treated, you'll have the result far beyond what you originally anticipated. And a proof of that, I could prove that through the story of what we've touched on today, and there's so much more to it. The golden nugget I would give others is just to treat others as you'd want to be treated. Do the best that you can every day because that's what you should be doing.
Right.
And that gives you value of life. It's what I want to leave the next generation. We're leaving the next generation to carry that goodwill, correct business practices, and treat people the way they should be treated forward. That to me is the key to longevity. It's key to quality. And guess what? That's what your brand becomes too.
That's right. Your personal brand. That's amazing, Christopher. Well, I really do appreciate your time. It's been great insights and great conversation, and appreciate everything you do for our industry. Probably more than anything, I appreciate you caring about people and wanting to make a difference, regardless of whether it's just the elevator industry or at the grocery store. That is a really great piece of advice and something we all have to continually remind ourselves to do. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
And your good friend, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. I truly hope this information helps my fellow elevator entrepreneurs to build your growth plan so you can free your time, allowing you to rest easy. If you need help getting your elevator business organized for growth, I've created tools and templates inside my favorite business operating system that you can access for free. Plus, you can have a 30-day free trial of the software. Just head over to elevatorstrategichub.com/EBOS. That's /EBOS to get your free access, or you can click the link below. Thanks again. I'll be back next time with a brand new episode on the Elevator Entrepreneur. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I will continue to empower my fellow elevator entrepreneurs.